Service. What is up, listeners? Welcome back to another episode of the Full Service Podcast. I am Tank Smith, your host. Today is episode 77. Thanks for being here. As always, you can find us on Twitter, on Instagram at Full Service Pod. I am at Tank Funkadelic. If you enjoy the show, make sure you are subscribed on whatever platform you're listening to us on. We just joined a few new spots, so if you are new to the podcast, ooh boy, welcome. I appreciate you being here. If you've been rocking with us for a while, perhaps if you've been here since the beginning, yo, hey, I appreciate it. Thanks for coming back to another week of the Full Service Podcast. You know, we're here every single Tuesday, so hey, as long as you're here, we will be as well. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, if you got an iPhone, hit us with a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, write us a review. That would help us out so much for visibility for the show. If you cannot do that, if you can't subscribe, if you can't write a review, if you can't hit us with a 5-star rating, tell somebody about the show. Tell somebody you like, tell somebody you don't like, tell somebody you don't know that well. Bond over the old Full Service Podcast. We're trying to spread the word, make this a global thing, and I cannot do that without the great, amazing people that listen to this podcast. If you want to support the show, head on over to patreon.com/fullservicepod, where you can hear interviews and episodes you cannot hear anywhere else. I mentioned last week at a Patreon, we had a breakup episode. So good. Fucking listen to it. Ooh boy. Patreon.com/fullservicepod. Today, episode 77, so excited. My guest is a Montreal-based elite companion and entrepreneur, Anna Perrena. We sat down, I guess it was probably the end of January, beginning of February. She was in Aruba for a few days. A lot of fun. We discussed the great city that is Montreal. We discussed her start in the fetish community in Montreal, working as a pro-dom, studying Tantra, working in companionship, plans for the future, so much. I know you're all going to love this. You can find Anna on Twitter at Anna_Perrena, on Instagram at Anna.Perrena. I have a link to her link tree as well in the show notes. That is linktr.ee/Anna Perrena. ANNAPERRENA. Make sure you hit those show notes. Show her some love. I'm going to stop talking. I'm excited for y'all to hear my conversation today with Anna Perrena. Thanks. Welcome back, listeners. It's Tank Smith. I'm so excited for today's episode. My guest is a Montreal-based elite companion and entrepreneur, Anna Perrena. Anna, thanks for being on the podcast.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure.
Heck yeah, super excited. Listeners, I am coming to you from Atlanta. Anna, where are you joining us from?
Well, right now I'm in Aruba. I'm in the Caribbean, but I'm actually from Montreal. So.
Oh, hell yeah, nice. How's Aruba this time of year?
Well, it's pretty much the same all year round. We're right next to the equator, so temperatures are very, very similar in summer and in winter. And it's gorgeous. I mean, it's so nice to be able to go outside and get some fresh air. Back in Montreal, people are mostly stuck indoors. A lot of people are going out and playing in the snow and skiing and all that, but I kind of hate the cold. I get cold very easily, so it's not really my thing. Yeah.
How you said you're from Montreal? How do you like Montreal?
On a normal day, I love it. Well, there's two things. I love it in the summertime. And in the winter time, there are some things that I love about it. But like I said earlier, I get so cold very easily, and I'm very affected by the seasonal changes. Like I get seasonal depression, but not on an emotional level. Like it's not mental so much as it is physical for me. I get very tired in the winter, like really a lot more tired than I normally am. So I try to travel a lot. I don't usually stay in winter in Montreal because I'm not optimal. But, when that's not going on, I think it's one of the best cities in the world. So this year it's been very, very quiet because of COVID, but usually we have so many festivals. I mean, I want to say like maybe starting in May or May, June until like September, there are nonstop activities and festivals going on all over the city. lots of free stuff, lots of shows, music festivals, art festivals, parades, and we just have an incredible social life and nightlife, and people are very, very friendly and very easygoing. I mean, just in Canada in general, we're known for being very friendly, you know. The
Yeah,
famous
yeah.
the famous quote that if you bump into someone in Canada, they'll apologize to you is definitely true. And so that's happened to me a few times. You know. But in French, the French part of Canada, there's an extra layer. In Toronto, for example, is a very big business city. Vancouver is gorgeous, but it's extremely expensive, and it has, a dark side where there's like an entire area of the island of Vancouver that has heroin and a lot of drugs and a lot of, you know, disparity, especially with the new drug fentanyl causing ravages. So both of those cities, I want to say, are a bit more dangerous and also have a dark side. Especially one where it's so expensive, everybody has to work all the time. So there's not much of a social life in terms of people don't even have time for a social life. So Montreal is actually a pretty affordable city to live. The wages are decent, and the rent is still not too high. It's getting higher, obviously, over the years, but it really hasn't gotten anywhere, close to like Toronto, for example.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, so for a big city, that is one of the benefits because it allows people to just have a normal 9 to 5 job, and then on the evenings and weekends they can go out. So we have a huge social life. Lots of bars, lots of restaurants with food from all over the world. It's a very multicultural, multi-ethnic city. There's an LGBTQ community. There's a fetish community. There's like everything you can think of. There's hip hop community, dance hall, like every type of culture, urban or not, is there. And so it's really interesting for that. So you can everybody can find their own in Montreal.
I feel like you just sold me on the city. You just sold me on Montreal. I was like, if I'm going to Canada, it's either Toronto or Vancouver. I didn't even think about Montreal. Now Montreal's the city to go to. It is.
It is. It depends on what you're looking to do. But if you want to party or you want a vacation, it's a great place. You'll find affordable parties everywhere, and the people are extremely, extremely fun.
I know you guys. There's a huge like comedy festival just for laughs. I think is in Montreal.
Yeah, we have everything. We have comedy festivals, we have theater, we have music festivals. There's so many music things going on. Like all summer long, every Sunday, there's two events that you can go to. One is on the mountain, which is called Tam Tam. It's been going on for 30 years or more, and it's the largest and the longest running unofficial event in North America. People just show up on the mountain and play these African drums and just freestyle, and people bring other instruments and freestyle, and other people come to dance and other people come to burn, and they just sit around and just glaze, and there's you have tightrope walkers and acrobats and all kinds of circus things going on, and you've got like larpers that are in the back like sword fighting, and people that are hiking the mountain, and it's just kind of very eclectic. And then you've got Picnic Electronique, which is an event that's official. It's organized. You have bars, and you can pay an amount to go in. You can get a pass for the whole summer, and you go every Sunday afternoon. And there's how do you call it? Electric music, or sorry, it's techno.
EDM.
There's techno music every Sunday, live DJs, bars, and like a couple of dance floors, and you can go and spend your whole Sunday afternoon dancing and having drinks with friends.
Yeah, Montreal seems like a dope spot. I gotta go. I gotta go for sure.
Yeah.
What's something you're passionate about? What do you like to do?
I'm very passionate about yoga. So I love to practice yoga, and I love to be around people who are yogis or practice yoga. I'm a health person. I'm a foodie also, so I love healthy food. I love to cook. I love to eat. I love to learn about food and discover new foods. And I'm really into health. So anything I can do to have an optimal health. I'm kind of I want to say an amateur or a baby biohacker. I don't know if you've ever heard the term, but basically biohackers are people who try to hack their biology. So I'm into, all this kind of cutting edge, like health and medicine and science and life extension stuff. So whatever I can do to be as healthy and as young as possible for as long as possible.
Would you get a microchip that made you live longer? Because I know, like in the future, like I feel like humans are gonna kind of like fuse with rope. Like technology is gonna be more present in like human lives, especially in biology.
people are under an illusion that they're not, but we are. Every
Yeah.
single person has a cell phone, at the end of their arm. And, the fact that it's not embedded into our bodies really makes no difference at this point.
Have you seen Black Mirror? Have you seen the show Black Mirror?
I have not, but I'm a big science techie person. I'm very, very interested in technology and the future in a lot of aspects. So I know a lot about that stuff, and I'm very open-minded. I'm not too scared of it, to be honest with you. I'm not one of those people that's freaking out. I think that if you aren't educated about a subject, it's easy to fear it, but the more you educate yourself about it, the more it becomes kind of exciting.
Yeah, because I mean, like it's like anything, you don't know about it, so you just have these like preconceived biases or just like ignorance about that subject, and then you learn about it, and you're like, holy, this it changes how you felt about that thing just learning about it.
Yeah, and that's not to say that every single technology I agree with or I like. There are technologies that I don't use in my life. A very easy example is a microwave. So I don't have a microwave. I don't use a microwave because when you microwave your food, you're basically nuking it. So you're actually destroying a lot of the nutritional properties and the good stuff that's going into your body just by microwaving it. And I, for example, will, heat everything on the stove with a little bit of water so that it stays at a maximum 100 degrees temperature, and that will retain a lot of the nutrients. So
Damn.
easy example like that, right?
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
not every single technology is beneficial for humankind. So, but I'm definitely the kind of person that would become a cyborg. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid of merging with technology. I think I already am merged with my technology. My phone is always on me at every single moment of the day. It's near me when I sleep at night. I have my laptop almost everywhere I go. I mean, I'm constantly connected. So, no, I don't. I don't have any fear about merging with technology. However, I think it's important to use discretion and to study and research the new technologies extensively, and be sure that what you're employing is actually safe and is actually going to be harmonious with your biology.
That makes sense because you don't want to do something that you can't take back, or like that something's just gonna like alter your life forever without like really looking into it. You don't want to do that.
Exactly. Yeah. Another example, I have breast implants, and breast implants 20, 30 years ago had a lot more problems than they do now. You had the horror stories of women developing breast cancer or having to, having health problems or rejecting them or whatever. I mean, you could still have bad things happen. I know one of my friends had hers removed because she had some complications. But in general, they're very safe nowadays. And I had mine done 7 years ago, and I have no regrets. And my body has accepted them very, very well. They feel very natural. People don't really notice when they look at me. It kind of looks like part of me. So it really feels like a part of my body at this point. And just that right there, actually, I consider is kind of being part cyborg already, because that's not natural. That's technology right there. I have technology in my body.
That's yeah, yeah. Not many people think of it like that, but yeah, you're 100% right. It's just like technology in my body, and it's enhancing my body. Yeah, that's dope.
They already make, implants for all kinds of things, right? To replace different things in the body that are not working. You have medical implants. We're already doing a lot of this stuff. So it really is, it's more nuanced than people realize.
Do you feel like the view being Canadian, you view it any differently than being American? I feel like in the US, like we always take like we look at things to like how could it be used for bad? Do you feel like being a Canadian you're more open to things? I don't know if that's a dumb question. I'm just like being Canadian, do you feel like that view
So do I
your
think it
view
has anything to do with being Canadian or American, or does it have anything to do with being me? I'm not really sure. I'm not a negative type person. So I went to a Tony Robbins concert once, or not concert, but presentation or whatever you want to call it. And I'm very much into, big forward thinkers. So that's me as an individual. That's the kind of mind that I have. Now, when I talk about it around me, I have friends that are very negative, and I have friends that are very positive. And over the years, I've kind of moved away from the negative people. I don't really keep them around too much anymore. So surrounding myself with open-minded, positive people. It's very difficult for me to say whether it is because they are Canadians or not. But I do want to say that in the States, there are very varied types of people. And, depending on what state you're from, you're going to see a different perspective on life as well.
that is true. You're 100% right about that.
So, for example, California is very forward thinking. state. And I have actually been there, and I really enjoy it. I get along with people there very well. So and if you go to Toronto, and if you go to Vancouver, and if you go to Montreal, it's very different how people feel and think. And in Calgary, they're all very different, just like in the States. And then it's from individual to individual. You have people who look at life from a place of from a negative based, fear based approach, and then you have people who are optimistic and choose to look at life from the most beneficial point of view. And you can actually see how that unfolds, and what kind of success that brings to them in the long run is very interesting to see how that impacts their life.
Yeah, I feel like if you kind of put out energy into the world and that kind of bounces back, I feel like, and if you kind of have this, if you see things as negative, then you're gonna get negative. I feel like results versus like having a positive outlook.
Yeah, because you're going to be skeptical, you're going to hesitate, you're going to be not trusting, and that's going to impact how you act. So how
Yeah,
you act will have results.
definitely.
Yeah. Whereas if you're someone who chooses to trust your instincts, trust your gut, and give things a chance, and open up to the possibility that things could go well, then you're going to take more chances. You're going to discover more, have more adventures, be more open. And that doesn't mean not having the power of discretion, right? You still should be able to trust your gut, and not just be a fool or blindly optimistic, right? You can be educated and make wise choices. But the fact of doing it with a positive or optimistic perspective will definitely impact your ability to create more positive results. And this isn't even a woo woo thing, it really is very, very basic psychology. And you can observe it in how people behave and what results they get from their behavior.
Yeah, I definitely agree. You saw like there's evidence. Like I definitely agree for sure.
Yeah, so I think it's a me thing. Going back to the question,
it's
I think I'm just one of those kinds of people, I guess.
it's not a Canada thing. It's an Anna thing. That's
Yeah, there you go.
hell yeah. Well, Anna, I appreciate you coming to the podcast. Fuck yeah.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you inviting me. This is a great opportunity
Hell yeah. Glad we could do it. Glad we could do it.
too.
Do you feel like you can remember your first exposure to sex work at all?
Yeah, so I want to say when I was a very young child, I probably saw like a street hooker, and asked my mom what that was, what was she doing, or I don't remember. Actually, I'm trying to think. Yeah, I think there was like an instant where I was exposed to streetwalkers, and having a conversation with my mom about it, and having her explain to me from a very, very, very negative perspective. She was very grossed out, actually. For her it was like vile.
I mean, there's a lot of people that, just like based on their life experiences, like no fault of their own, they just have like a negative view of sex work in general.
Yeah. And also, I want to say, so my mother, interestingly enough, she wanted to scare me a lot because I was a very adventurous, kind of outgoing person, and I was always very trusting, but I wasn't so trusting. I mean, from her perspective, I was very trusting. From my perspective, I always trusted my gut, which is kind of different. But because I was a kid and I was always quite advanced and quite intelligent for my age, it was hard for her to make the difference between things, and I kind of knew I did. So she tried to scare me a little bit. She told me stories about girls getting, kidnapped and forced into, sexual slavery, and the undersides of sex trafficking and all that. So I was exposed to those realities, I want to say, a little bit too young. I mean, I am who I am today, and I love who I am. So I've obviously worked through it in some way, but that was kind of traumatic for me, actually. She kind of presented it to me like most sex workers, if not all sex workers, are forced into it for a lot of horrible reasons, and poor them, aren't they just a victim?
Yeah, a lot of people that narrative is just to use to like kind of scare people. There are definitely fucking victims of sex trafficking and it's a terrible thing, but they try to like make consensual sex work into sex trafficking and that's like a huge push just to like eliminate sex work completely almost.
I think that that narrative is used to control the I want to say the patriarchy pushes that narrative a lot to control the potential matriarchy. Now we're going into very deep philosophy here, but I really feel like Now, I want to say that there are very empowered women out there who are very feminist and who choose to keep their sexuality for themselves, even to the point of being completely celibate. And that is 100% okay. An empowered woman can choose to be celibate. She can choose to have a partner. She can choose to have multiple partners. She can be a complete slut. She can be a whore. She could be anything she wants to be, and all of it is okay. As far as I'm concerned, as long as she is able to communicate her desires, her boundaries, her fears, and respect and honor herself and really follow what her heart wants. So for me, an empowered woman follows her own calling, independently of what other people think of what she's doing. So that's, for me, that's the most feminist thing anyone can do. But I do think that an empowered woman is difficult to control, and keeping women based in fear makes them easier to control. So this fear-based narrative around sex work is very convenient. Now, is sex trafficking not a real thing? Absolutely, it is a real thing. And I have a good friend who was trafficked for years, and I know the horrors of it. I do not deny them in any way. And I know also that some sex workers start at a way too young age. I have another friend who started sex work when she was 14 years old, and I see how that was traumatizing for her. So there is a dark side to sex work, but there is a dark side to politics. There is a dark side to a lot of different things in life. You know, there's a dark side to almost anything. Anything can be corrupt. It really depends on what angle you're coming at something from. So the fact that we blanket label sex work from a place of fear is because it is convenient and allows us to better control women.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like even it starts at the whole like women, dudes can sleep with a bunch of chicks. Fine, women sleeps with a bunch of dudes. Terrible thing, horrible thing. Even like just like even that, like it's just trying to control. Not like I'm a dude and be like we're trying to control women's sexuality, but it's like it is a thing, you know.
It is a thing, and in the best example is in the laws of the extreme Islam. Now, I have very good Muslim friends, and there are very different kinds of Muslims in this world. But when you have the very extremist Islamic religion, which you see in the UAE, for example, their laws literally state that they can have multiple wives. And you've never heard of a woman having multiple husbands.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's even like Saudi Arabia, like women not being able to drive until like a couple of years ago. I mean, it's this world. The world is fucked up. It's a fucked up out here.
But people think it's an ancient thing going on over there, but it's actually really modern. And that's the scary part. So let me give you a little bit of background. My mother is from Egypt and my father is from Quebec. So I'm part Middle Eastern, part French Canadian. So I was raised in a Catholic family, and so I kind of, I was always around a lot of Middle Eastern people. I was raised by my mother, so I was raised in the Middle Eastern culture, hearing Arabic around me all the time. I don't speak it, unfortunately, but so I have a lot of Muslim friends, and I know a little bit about the history that's going on and what's going on over there, and I kind of have a different perspective on it. So my family left the Middle East because it was being taken over by Islam. If you were to go back to the 1950s when my mom was born in Cairo, women were very liberated. And, even in the 60s over there, it was the 60s just like it was in America. And you had, women were dressed the same way they were dressing in America. They were driving. You had all the revolutions that were happening in the 60s in America were happening over there. So it was a very, very liberated place. It was more Christian based. And slowly it started being taken over by modern day Islam. And when you go there and you look and see today, you're going to see women wearing scarves and long sleeves and long skirts walking around in this very conservative, restrictive garb. So you're really seeing a huge drastic change towards extreme conservatism in the Middle East.
Nor you'd think like a society gets more liberal as time goes, but a lot of societies are like getting back to like traditionalism or yeah, like you said, more conservative values. It's wild.
Yeah.
How was strange weird segue? How was getting into sex work? How did you start? What was your journey into sex work?
Let's see how far I want to go back. So when I was a kid, I was always really curious about sexuality. It's always been a big, big part of my imagination and my fantasy realms. I always wanted to know more about sexuality in general, and was quite fascinated by that aspect of humanity and human life. And I was always a very sexual person. So, discovering my body quite young, enjoying myself a lot, and being extremely repressed by my culture and my mother and my family made me kind of feel, yeah, like I was a bit of an alien, but I was also a bit of an alien in a lot of other aspects. So I guess I was kind of used to feeling that way. And part of me being able to be myself forced me to sort of, yeah, accept that alien like feeling and sort of take on an attitude of I don't give a fuck and fuck you all for your judgments and your morals and your rules suck anyway.
Fuck yeah.
I had to do that for my own mental sanity because I never really fit in anywhere, even in other aspects, at school or wherever it was. I was always kind of a eclectic outsider. So my views on life were so different from everyone else in every aspect that I got used to that being my reality and decided to just, how can you say it in English? Yeah, like just take like accept myself and broadcast myself and have this kind of fuck you attitude and just be like whatever, it is who I am.
Hell
And
yeah.
so and that helped me to survive and work through that because otherwise it would have been way too painful. So I really had to do that for my own mental sanity. So I very quickly got this kind of attitude of it doesn't matter what the world expects of me. What matters is that I am as happy that I can be, the happiest that I can be in every moment. So from there on, started discovering my sexuality in my teenage years and always kind of being, yeah, very interested in boys. I don't want to say that I was a slut because I wasn't. I really was very selective, but I was a lot more open than other girls around me. I wasn't really worried about this whole idea of you have to act a certain way so people think that you're a good girl. I didn't really give a shit if others thought I was a slut, and a lot of people thought I did just because I really, I had a lot of self acceptance and I spoke about sexuality openly and easily, and I love to dress sexy and things like that. But in reality, I wasn't sexual really. I was still a virgin, or I wasn't really having sex with anyone, or I was just slowly discovering, just like everybody else was. And when I turned 18, I met a guy who was like 41 and who was into the fetish community. And I've always been curious about that stuff, had some fantasies about it, and wanted to discover that. So I asked him to bring me to one of his parties. And so I went to my first fetish party at 18 years old. And I love that experience. It was so powerful because in that world, people are so open minded and so respectful, and consent is such a huge part of the dynamics. So it was the first time in my life that I felt like I could be somewhere, be as sexual as I want to be, dress as slutty or not slutty as I want to dress, and that people around me would respect my space, honor my space, treat me with kindness, and honor my boundaries and ask for permission to talk to me or to touch me, which is quite common in fetish events.
Do you feel like going to that fetish event kind of like opened up your eyes to, I guess, sexuality even more?
Well, for sure. So that was the beginning of a journey for me. Because, like I said, those were my experiences being younger. So being in a space where that was the energy and that was the attitude was the most healing thing I can ever experience at that point. It really opened my eyes to the fact that there were safe spaces in this world where I could be myself, express myself, and be honored and experience all the things that I wanted to experience in a healthy, consensual way. And that there were a lot of other people doing that. And so I was able to explore so many things. And I stayed in the fetish scene for many, 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 many years afterwards. And so my journey actually truly started there. After that, I was hooked. I was going to parties all the time, trying to convince my friends to go with me. Got some friends to go, and then finally, at the age of 20, made a boyfriend who was down to discover this world with me. So we started just going to every single party. There was a party every 2 weeks, and we were going out all the time. And that's where I started to really get to know other sex workers, because there's a lot of sex workers in the fetish scene, and especially fetish workers. So met some other dominatrixes, including my mentor.
Hell yeah. How was going from being part of the fetish scene to saying, "Hey, I kind of want to get into sex work"? What did that kind of look like?
So, in my early 20s, I no, actually, yeah, in my late teens, early 20s, I was in school, and I was in university, or I was in college getting ready for university, because we have in Quebec a college that is between high school and university.
Okay.
So, I was doing that, and I had some health issues. I've had health issues from a young age, and I kind of got sick, and I didn't have the energy to continue school, so I had to drop out. I ended up working in a bank for a while, and I fucking hated it. No, I'm very interested in finance. I just don't like working in a bank.
Yeah, yeah. It's those are two different things. Being a
Yeah,
finance, yeah.
exactly. So yeah, so I was working there for a year and a half, feeling like that place was sucking the soul out of me, and I was really good friends with this incredible dominatrix in Montreal called Contessa Allura, and she is the one who approached me actually. So I was going out to these places for my own fun and pleasure, and having some slaves at party walking up to me asking if they could, massage my feet or serve me in whatever way. And sometimes I would say yes just because I had like sore feet or it sounded like fun. I didn't particularly feel dominant. I preferred to be either kinky or sub in my intimacy with the right partner sometimes, or just explore, but I didn't consider myself a real dom at that point. But in many conversations with this girl, it eventually came up, that I would make a really good dom. And so, she said to me, let me get you out of this place. You need another job. You need to do something you're going to love. I would love to mentor you if you're interested. And in the meantime, if you want, I can hook you up with some webcam work. So she helped me to set up my profile back when you had to take like a printer and scanner to put in your ID. And I didn't even have one of those back at home. So I went to her house and she printed and scanned my IDs and helped me set up my profile. And I started webcamming and making money instantly. And it was really fun. I actually really enjoyed the work. It was safe, it was a nice transition because you're in your room and you're alone, and it was whatever boundaries I had, and quickly realized I didn't have that many boundaries. So that was fun.
I feel like that has to beat working at the bank also.
Definitely. And it paid more too. And while I wasn't rolling in the dough, it's really not as it's not as big of a salary as it is to, for example, escort. But for me at that point, it was quite decent, and it allowed me to take my living experience to another level. And she trained me, and so I learned how to be a pro dom. I did training with her for weeks until at the end we were doing duo sessions together to practice.
How did you like doming?
I like it. I mean, I did fetish work for 10 years. So obviously I didn't dislike it. I feel at this point like how do you say in English? There's an expression in sense saying in French that where you say j'ai fait le tour. And when you say j'ai fait le tour, it's like I've done the tour. It's like I've seen it all. I've done it all. I've experienced it. And
Okay.
I don't feel like there's a lot in there left for me to learn or grow from. And so it's gotten a little bit stale for that reason. Like I feel like I'm someone who constantly needs to keep growing and evolving and doing new things. So I've gotten a bit bored with
That makes sense. It's like no matter what, like I feel like anything you do, it's like you want to try to keep growing in that, and then once you kind of reach the, I guess not like maximum growth, but not like tapped out, but once you've learned like not like everything you can learn, it's like I want to kind of like transition to something else, or maybe I want to challenge myself by doing something new.
exactly. But at the time, it was fabulous. First of all, it really allowed me to come into myself in terms of being, what does being dominant mean, and how does that impact me as someone who considers herself as somewhat of an alpha female. I have a very strong personality, and using it in that setting really gave me an opportunity to channel that and also learn how to develop control. It's given me a really big sensibility on how does my strength as a woman impact the people around me, and how can I dilute it or amplify it based on a situation, which is really an interesting life lesson. And it's also given me a chance to learn a lot about energetics. I think a lot of domination is energetics. So how certain forms of play, whether mental or physical, impact a person's mind, their body, their emotions, and how you can control that. You end up learning how to play with people like if they were an instrument, trying to create some beautiful music with it, right? Trying to create a nice melody.
Yeah.
That's kind of the best way I can explain it. And so that was a very nice experience. I did a lot of foot fetish also for a few years. I did foot fetish full time, and there was no one else doing it. And I realized there were a lot of guys into that. So I kind of milked the market. There was no sex involved. I never got naked in any of my sessions. It wasn't until many years later that I started offering some nudity for a bigger price. And when I did that, it was really because I had the fantasy of doing it. I never felt sexually satisfied by any of what I was doing. And I really wanted to go further. And I was kind of being held back by a mix of morals and also a mix of the opinions of the men in my life, in my personal life.
Okay. Do you feel like the people in your life viewed doming any different from like full service sex work?
Yeah, of course. So when you tell someone you're doing fetish work, any kind of fetish work, and you're saying there's no nudity, no contact with my genitals, and no sex, all of a sudden, they can find it a little strange, especially if they're very normal people, right? But there's a different kind of like, okay, there's a respect there. Like, okay, that's a little weird. You're weird, but you're not a whore.
Well,
Does that make
that's
sense though? I
no,
mean,
no. It makes 100% sense. It's just so it's such a like not like vanilla, but it's just like God.
that's what I wanted to say, but I don't know if the viewers know the term vanilla. So vanilla means anything that's not kinky and not fetish. So if you're in the fetish community, you hear someone saying vanilla, they're basically referring to the normal people. So it's like in Harry Potter, you have muggles. So for the
Yeah.
fetish people, vanillas are like the muggles.
I never thought about it, but you're 100% right. Vanilla muggles.
Yeah. So it was kind of like my way of keeping that sort of respectability, and especially keeping that sort of weird level of comfort that my boyfriend had at that time. So he was comfortable with my work, helped me build my business and my brand, gave me a lot of advice, was very active. I had a boyfriend, not the first one that I had in the beginning, I discovered the scene with, but the second one I had after that, I was with for 3 years, and he really helped me build my brand. And taught me how to run the business and helped me build these concepts and stuff. But for him, his comfort zone ended at actual sex work. So that kind of was his boundary. He didn't want me to have sex with the clients. And it took a long time for me to get him to say, like, yes, okay, I don't mind if you get naked with them, but this is the boundary.
Was there any fear, like saying like I want to get naked, I want to do full service sex work? How was that decision for you?
Was there any fear on my part? No, I was always very curious about it, but he didn't want, and I was able to respect that because, I loved him at that time, and I didn't feel like I needed that. I felt like with what I was doing, I was already making a lot of money. It was fun. We had built an entire lifestyle around my work because I set up a space in my house, our house, to receive the clients. So, it was kind of a cool adventure. So I made peace with that. I said I accepted I decided to accept his boundaries. And, I think part of me also appreciated having those boundaries because in a social context, it was easier for me to talk about it with my friends. And, some of my family knew, not all my family, but, I want to say had some hesitations, but they weren't always present. They were mostly amplified by my social network. I want to say.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah,
Because when people are around you are talking about negatively about this thing or not positively about something,
exactly.
you might absorb that, not even necessarily realizing that you're absorbing it, and then just having this unconscious bias against this thing that you're not really involved in, but it's just other people's fucking ideas in your head.
Exactly. And me wanting to, even though I did have quite a bit of an attitude of fuck you, I am who I am, there was still a part of me that wanted to keep up with appearances to a minimum amount, like, I feel like I had the respect of people around me and I wanted to keep it.
Yeah, I mean we're all bound by social constructs and shit. It's like I wanna not like impress my friends, but at least I want them to like respect me and like sort of feel like we're on this like have a sort of similar worldview about some shit, you know?
Yeah. And I was always curious also about doing pornography, which I haven't really done. But I want to say that the relationships that I was in at that young age, in my discussions with them and my shyness around, like I wasn't at the point where I am now where I could just push doing whatever I want to do and be like, fuck you if you don't like it. But now I'm years old. I don't know if I should be saying this in the podcast. Actually, I don't
I,
usually
I'll blank it out if you want.
I usually give my real age. I usually say I'm like 30 just because I don't want. So it's not actually about me caring about people knowing my real age so much as I don't want to give too much of my real information.
Oh, okay, that makes
Right.
sense.
Yeah, so I'm kind of ambiguous about, but anyhow, yeah, so let's say I'm in my early 30s and it took me a long time to sort of really come to a point where I really own myself, especially being so different from the rest of the world. It took time for me to really own myself, even though I am such a strong alpha kind of girl. But
Yeah.
I wasn't necessarily at a young age. I had to build up that alpha side to be able to accurately represent myself and be who I am and own myself. You need to develop quite a personal shield to be able to withstand the waves, I want to say.
Yeah, I guess like strong foundation. You know, strong foundation basically.
Yeah, so I want to say that that kind of forced me to become very alpha because being alpha and taking my space allows me to take a space that is different without being unhappy about it or without being kind of affected by other people's negative opinions and also allowing me to surround myself with the right type of people.
Do you feel like you like in general just like based on your life have taken on this kind of alpha role, or do you feel like it was like influenced by doming, or do you feel like if you hadn't domed you'd still be an alpha female?
I already was. I already was, I just wasn't dominant. So there's a difference
Okay.
between being an alpha female and being dominant in the sexual context. So,
Okay.
I've always been someone who could lead, or at least either be a solo or be a leader. I would make a good boss, or I wouldn't make a good employee. That's not. I don't do well living by other people's ideologies or rules. So owning myself and doing things my own way is the only way for me to be happy and be able to express myself fully.
Fuck yeah.
So I've always been like that. Long before I was a dom, actually, just what doming taught me, honest to God, is how to be in service. Because in a doming scenario, especially a professional dom, you are actually the one in service to the sub. It's their fantasy, their desires, their boundaries. When they come to you, they'll tell you what are their fetishes, what they don't want to experience. And so you're basically creating their fantasy for them. It's a service. You're the one who's in service to the sub, but you're doing it from a dominant perspective where you're making them feel this rush of the loss of control. You're like the person who's guiding the musicians at the concert hall. In French, you say chef d'orchestre.
Oh, like a conductor?
Yeah, you're like a conductor, like a sexual conductor for other people's fantasies.
Yeah, that makes 100% sense.
Yeah,
How was I mean, you're so do you still dom or
not really. I kind of retired. So what happened was when I first started doing escorting, I want to say like maybe 2.5 years ago. So what happened was after years of doing the fetish work, I started getting a little bit bored with it, wanting to have new challenges. At first, what happened was about 4 or 5 years ago, I started discovering Tantra. Um, had one of my friends in Montreal start getting into it and offering workshops and all this stuff. And so I went, I did a couple of workshops around the world. I started dabbling in it. At first, I thought I was going to offer tantric services, and it's been a challenge for me to get into the tantric work because it's very elusive. Um, it's hard to define. It's hard to uh, box in. Every tantric provider has her own style and does her own thing, and it's so varied that it's a lot harder to learn than, for example, domination.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, what is like? I feel like my first, like, just like, not like first intro, like first. I feel like the first time I ever heard of tantra was American Pie 2, when this dude is trying to sleep with Stifler's mom, and he keeps doing these, like, basically like tantric exercises so that by the end of the movie he can sleep with Stifler's mom. But that's like the first time I ever heard of it, right? Until like actually like start seeing sex workers and kind of like I had like a tantra session. But like, what is tantra to you? Like, if somebody were to ask you what is tantra, what is that?
Like if you were to go in the dictionary and look for the word tantra, there would be quite I don't even know what they would like. It's an ancient practice, right? It's been around for a long time. It's actually a branch of yoga, so that's what's interesting. You have tantric yoga, and it's breath, sound, and movement. It's breath work. It's energy work. It's being conscious of your body. The tantric philosophy presents how being fully embodied and through breath work, physical work, you can reach spirituality. So it's one view of spirituality where the spirit and the body are interconnected. Whereas most forms of religion and spirituality teach you to ascend out of the body and beyond the body, Tantra teaches you to go within the body to find divinity.
Okay.
So there's a form of yoga which is called tantric yoga. So the tantric yoga is a lot of it's a lot of breath work. It's forms of yoga that are very actually they're quite physically exhausting. I think one of the harder yoga classes that I've done have been tantric yoga. You're doing a lot of building up energy from your groin up your body and into your heart and your head, building heat, doing breath work, oxygenating, and it's very powerful. You know, you have ancient tantra, which is kind of a spiritual. It's very, very not religious, but it's definitely a spiritual philosophy. And then you have modern day tantra, which is almost exclusively in North America based around sexual practices, which is not actually accurately representative of the whole of Tantra, where Tantra is actually a spirituality and a spiritual philosophy around that comes from the East, and it's a form of yoga, and it's from India and Asia, where going within the body allows you to be connected with God through fully embodying your physical self during your time on earth. So, in North America, Tantra is really focusing on the physical practices. So, physical practices can include all kinds of different things, everything from learning to be, multi-orgasmic, sacred spot massage, massaging the sacred spot in the body. So for men, it's the prostate. For women, it's in the vagina, up behind the front wall. And all kinds of practices where you're doing kind of energy work or meditative connection with another person, where you're practicing sexuality but not in a goal oriented way. So it could be, sitting together and breathing energy in a circle together and feeling it going from one body to the other and building up the energy. That could be a practice. Could also be, the more known one, which is tantric massage, massaging the whole body, touching on all the meridian points, and then, massaging the internal body as well. For women or men, it would be the sacred spot at the end. I want to say that physical tantric practices do not focus on orgasm. The goal of the practice is the journey. So it takes away this sexual attitude where, you fuck to come. and it's a lot more meditative. So it's about coming back into your body, feeling your whole body, feeling your energy, feeling your partner, feeling the divine within you, and feeling the pleasure that can come from that, but experiencing pleasure for the sake of pleasure, not for the sake of orgasm.
I feel like everybody should be doing that. It's just like let's pleasure for pleasure instead of like let's get to the end, you know?
Absolutely. And this also teaches people to be a lot more multi-orgasmic. You know, I actually learned how to have a female ejaculation from a very incredible tantric master who goes around giving workshops and teaching women how to ejaculate. I was so blocked when I was younger. I could never ejaculate. And I was under the impression that not every woman could, because there's so little, it's such a mystery in our society. Female ejaculation is not very spoken about, and a lot of people have no idea what it is or have a lot of misconceptions around it. And one of the misconceptions is that only some women can do it, but it's actually a physical capacity that all women are born with and is part of our biology.
Okay.
There isn't some women that are born with glands that other women don't have. It's not like a Russian roulette, like, do you get the squirt glands? You know?
Yeah, yeah. We all got the same thing.
Right? So, and it's, because we're still in a patriarchy, women's sexuality is not often spoke of, and it's not accurately represented, even from a biological standpoint. And it's not something that we learn in sex ed when we're in high school. They don't explain how the body works or what are all the parts and how they can be used in different ways, because pleasure is not something that is to be spoken of. What do you learn? You learn about STDs, about how to not get your girlfriend pregnant, about, how to do things, the basic reproductive purposes of your organ. And that's
Just
it.
the standard sex, like standard penis and vagina. That's all you need to know. That's
Well,
it. Like,
it's no, it's more than that. It's really the reproductive and the health aspects. So
yeah.
how do you not get sick? And how do you have control over your pregnancies?
Okay.
Which I'm all for people learning, but then actually learning about what the body is and what it can do and what's going on there and what is sexuality, that doesn't get taught. And it's very
It's
kind of a
repressed.
mystery. It's kind of a mystery for most people.
I feel like being in the South, like in the South of the U.S., it's like people are so like you can't talk about sex. Like I feel like when I think about like the sex ed that I had just even in school, it's just like so basic and you're not learning anything. I feel like a lot of people now they're like taking example just like looking at porn and that's like people are like learning from porn even though that's not real at all
Yeah,
because people don't talk about shit.
yeah, it's a really dangerous thing, and you get a lot of cases of people having very negative first experiences, or even ending up in the hospital for trying to attempt practices that are shown in a very, very misleading way in pornography.
Yeah. Because people are the people filming the porn. They're professionals. They know what the fuck they're doing.
And they have
They got
hours,
shit you don't got at your house.
yeah, and they have hours of preparation, right? They show up ready for those scenes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's very, very false. And I have nothing against porn. I mean, I've watched porn. I have friends that are in the porn industry. I have friends that are porn producers. I think porn has a place in the world and it's a great tool, but I think that the lack of sexual education is very, very, very toxic in a world where pornography exists. So it was already toxic without pornography. But the fact that there is pornography makes it even more toxic, in my opinion. Not that pornography is toxic. Pornography is great and it has a place in the world. But the fact that pornography exists very much amplifies the need for education.
Definitely. Because, yeah, people are going to be trying shit they seen on fucking Pornhub or whatever website, not knowing that you can't do that shit, or hey, these people prepared for this, or they know what the fuck they're doing. You just saw a video and you're like, hey, let's try to do that with zero knowledge. That's how people fucking get hurt.
Yeah,
Like, that's,
exactly. And that's happening more and more, especially in the southern US where it's such a taboo subject. The more a place is taboo around sexuality, the more you have these horror stories happening, because we live in this dichotomy society where modern day, gives you this incredibly open and easy access to sexuality, but there are still locations that, despite having that very present in their society, are still so conservative and so judgmental around it that they actually shut down any possibility of a healthy conversation around it.
Yeah, it's like let's not like instead of like good education on sex, it's like don't have sex and we're not going to talk about it. And then you're like,
Exactly.
I don't know shit. Like that's how you fucking have babies. Like
Exactly. Yeah. So I didn't realize until I was even me, that I'm so open-minded, as you can tell, obviously, right? Even me, I didn't even know until the age of 21 years old that I could actually squirt. And I had never squirted. And I thought that I was one of those girls that didn't have that physical ability.
see, you're probably there's probably somebody listening to the podcast. They're older than 21. They never squirted.
And they
So you're
are under the
really
impression that they can't. That's the fucked up part. That's even more fucked up, is that you don't even know that you're physically capable of it.
yeah.
So it was, and it's because I was in the fetish world, and I had a really good friend who is friends with this man, is a man named Steve Pickus. So Steve Pickus is a tantric provider. He offers session work with women, and he works with women all over. So he travels around Canada. He goes to the United States, and he's the funniest looking guy. You know, he's this tall guy with long hair, and he looks like, you would think he's like a Native American or like a rocker or something. He has long curly hair. He wears like a leather jacket and jeans, and he doesn't look particularly like rich or anything like that. He's just a very average kind of guy. And the first time I saw him, I was like, wow, okay, that's not what I expected. He's such a down to earth and straight, like honest guy, and he's great. And he's a master of tantra, and he does tantric work and offers sessions all around. He gives workshops and stuff, and his specialty is making women squirt. So it doesn't matter how old you are, if you've never squirted in your entire life, he guarantees that by the end of the session with him, you're going to be waterfalls. And
Now this guy,
yeah,
hey.
and it works. And so he was coming to Montreal, and he wanted to train some guys on how to do this technique. So some of the guys in my friends and in my community wanted to learn how to offer these services professionally. And so he needed a couple of girls to be models for the training session for these guys. So me and another girl volunteered, and we received this session. And it's like a full body massage, an external massage to begin with, and an internal massage to end with. And by the end of this thing, we were both squirting waterfalls.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was a very powerful experience. It's very, very, very powerful. I personally had some health issues, like I told you a while back, and I had a lot of inflammation in my body. So I was actually, the external massage for me was quite a painful experience. For my friend, she had a blast. She loved it. It was amazing. It was like 4 or 5 men having their hands all over her, just massaging her whole body, because they were all training. So normally when he does this, he'll do the massage, or he'll have like one assistant. So I don't want to scare people that are listening to this. Like, you don't have to have 5 guys massaging you if that makes you uncomfortable. But we did. And, she was having the time of her life. And I was like crying because I had so much inflammation in my body. I was like, oh, fuck, it hurts. And I got through it because I figured, you know what? If this is, if the, it just so happened that every single spot they were putting their hands on, that he was showing them where to touch me, I had tension and built up like negative, whatever. So it was like a purging for me. I decided to get through it. I figured if every single spot he's massaging has tension, this is probably the healthiest thing I could be doing for myself right now. Let's get rid of all those blockages. So I got through it, and by the end of it, it was, I did the second part, the internal part, with my boyfriend at the time, and Steve, and I was squirting a lot. Like it was very liberating. It didn't feel particularly pleasurable the first time for me. It actually took a while. It felt like I was kind of re-educating my body. My boyfriend kept doing this technique to me afterwards. So Steve told him, like, you got to keep doing this to her, do the external and internal massage, every day for a while until she gets fluid. And so we did. We practiced a bunch, and it got easier and easier. And eventually, I just became a natural squirter. Now it's very natural, very easy for me, and it's a lot more pleasurable. Those first experiences weren't for me, but for my friend who was there, she had a great time and she loved it, and it was very pleasurable for her. So I would assume that I had blockages that not everybody does have, and on a physical level, not on an emotional level. But I think it's healthy. It was healthy for me to get that, to get over that. And a lot of women, what happens to them is they will have their sponge fill up with liquid. They want to squirt. They don't know that they can. They don't know how. And what happens is their urethra opens a little bit because the liquid wants to come out, and bacteria will get into your urethra. And so
Okay.
when they don't squirt, sometimes that fluid will go back up into the uterus and women will have bladder infections.
So it's like imperative almost. It's almost like everybody should be squirting.
It can be physically negative. It can be bad for your health. If you are regularly stimulating that part of your vagina and it fills with fluid and you're not letting it out, it's like the female version of having blue balls,
Okay.
except you can actually get an infection from it.
Do you feel like your orgasm is any better knowing how to squirt versus not before?
It's not at all the same thing. So
It doesn't have anything to do with.
no, it's like, I don't know if you've ever had a prostate orgasm. Have you?
Okay, no,
No.
I
Okay.
haven't. No.
So men also have multiple forms of orgasm, and actually, a lot is not known about men's sexuality. It's not just a sexist thing. A lot of people think it's a sexist thing. Nothing is known about females' sex organs, but that's not true. There's a lot that's not known about male sex organs too. So in the male body, so males can have orgasms and they can have ejaculations, and they can also ejaculate with an orgasm. So
Okay,
they're
yeah, two separate
they're
things.
two separate things. And you can have and so your orgasm is actually coming from your prostate, if I'm correct. So I hope nobody comes on this and contacts you and says that's not accurate. So I'm just saying this from memory. I may be not 100% accurate, but from what I understand, you have your orgasm. You can get stimulated from your prostate, and you can have an orgasm in your penis without ejaculating. If so, so for men who do ejaculation control, which is something that is taught in the modern sexual tantric practices. So most men who are tantric men and practice sexual tantric practices will learn how to control their ejaculation. So they learn how to have lots of sexual experiences without ejaculating. And one of the things that can come out of that is that you learn how to peak, experience your orgasm in your penis and not ejaculate. And you can also have sacred spot. Sacred spot is the prostate, so you can have prostate orgasms. So you have prostate orgasms, you can have a penis orgasm without an ejaculation, and you can have an ejaculation, and you can have an ejaculatory orgasm. So sometimes you ejaculate and you don't actually orgasm. It's just the liquid is coming out, but the peak of pleasure doesn't occur. So that's, and actually dominatrixes will offer what's called ruined orgasm, where they kind of do that, and sometimes they'll milk you, and you'll just be like losing cum, but you're not peaking in the pleasure sense, which is kind of a way of degrading them. So
Okay.
so the male genitals are very versatile as well, and so there's a lot we don't know about female genitals and male genitals. And one of the things that I've realized over the years is everything that we teach about sexuality is based on either health or reproduction, but everything that really is about pleasure tends to be kept in the dark for both genders, and even for the third gender, which is people who are like in the Native Americans they call them three spirits, which we don't actually have that in our culture. So there's a lot going down, that there's so much going on down there that we're not even talking about. But I don't even remember how I started talking about this. Oh yeah,
I feel like I was like, what's tantra?
it's such a varied thing. So in the Indian culture, you have yoga, and yoga is a philosophy. So it's not just a physical practice, just like Tantra is a philosophy and it's not just a physical practice. But in North America, we focus on the physical practice aspect of it almost entirely, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, like I guess I've had, yeah, like one tantra session, and there was like a lot of like breathing, a lot of like almost like making like guttural noises, like a lot of like eye contact.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah. Because
Yeah.
through breath, sound, and movement, you're activating your energy and moving energy and powering up, kind of like a battery. And you can reach the most ecstatic states physically through these practices. So that's really, really, really powerful.
I feel like I need to do it again though, because like I'm one of those people like sometimes I'll like get in my head and then I'll be like necessarily as present as I should be and then thinking about other shit and then I'm like, oh fuck, this is what am I doing? And then they can tell. They can tell.
Because in North America, we are so disconnected from our bodies, the physical aspects and physical practices of these philosophies are the most popular aspect because it really gives people a concrete, practical doorway to accessing embodiment. And so
Okay.
it's actually actively allowing us to get out of our fucking heads, forget about social media, disconnect from our phones that are such a big part of us already, and fully embody our being. But ultimately, Tantra is a form of yoga. It's Tantric Yoga. And you can do Tantric Yoga where you're doing breath work during your yogic practices, or you can go into sexual tantra where you're really working with the genitals and either with yourself or with a partner, bringing your sexual expression and experience to the next level and experiencing the divine through sexuality. Doing things like, for example, yab yum. Yab yum is where you both sit in an Indian position, but the woman is on the man with her genitals on his, and you're both wearing clothes and you're doing breath work together where you're circulating the energy from the woman's heart into the man's heart, down to his genitals, out of his genitals and into the woman's genitals, and then into her heart and out of her heart and into his heart. And it kind of goes in a circle, and you're doing this with breath work and eye contact. Eye gazing is a big practice. Sacred spot massage is a practice. And there are so many others. And one of the bigger aspects of it that I really appreciate is learning how to express your desires, how to express your boundaries, how to name your blockages or your fears or whatever's holding you back, and how to share intimately and openly with a partner in a safe space to be able to explore. And that actually touches BDSM in an interesting way. So I actually organized a workshop in Montreal called Tantra Mixed BDSM with some teachers that have been doing this together around the world that I've worked with before, called Lori Handlers and Om Rupani. Om Rupani is a teacher who practices BDSM and gives workshops around the world and who has experience with Tantra. And Lori Handlers is a Tantra teacher. And they do Tantra meets BDSM, and they came to Montreal to give this workshop. Because in BDSM, consent and discussion and communication is huge. And you're also working with energies.
Yeah.
So they actually create a really nice synergy together. And the more conscious you are when you're practicing BDSM, the more tantric you are in your expression of BDSM, the more powerful and sacred and beautiful the experience of BDSM can be.
Do you feel like doing tantra has allowed you to like I guess like know yourself better
Um,
or like understand your body more maybe?
I want to say that the work I did with Steve Pickus was very powerful. And then evolving in Tantra has allowed me to look at sexuality from a healthier perspective. So I want to say that
Okay.
it's impacted my philosophy the most. I always had a
Okay.
good perspective of sexuality, but this has created an internal harmony.
Oh, nice. Fuck yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because society really teaches shame. So even though I didn't necessarily accumulate shame, learning a philosophy or an approach that was able to prove to me to what extent I want to say that I was right all along about embodying myself and respecting and honoring myself, and expressing the fact that I was very sexual could be something extremely divine and spiritual and beautiful and sacred, really took me a step further on my healing process or my healing journey.
That's awesome. That's great.
Yeah. So I dabbled
Do,
in Tantra long before getting into escorting. It started 4 or 5 years ago doing workshops. I want to say 5 years ago was the first workshop I did touching on that stuff. And that began my journey shifting away from fetish work into something different.
So you start in doming, and then you kind of start learning tantra. You move into companionship. How was that transition? How do you like companionship?
So, actually, what happened was I was getting involved in the Tantric community in Montreal, and I eventually, very briefly, dated someone in the community who wanted to become a sex worker, a man who wanted to do sex work. And he wanted to do tantric session work with women to do like healing women and empowering them and helping them to overcome wounds and using the tantric practices to connect with them as a male sex worker. So when we were seeing each other, it kind of came on the table that I've always wanted to escort. And was the first time in my life that I was in a relationship with a man whose reaction was, well, fuck yeah, why don't you do that?
Yeah.
And you should totally do that. You would be great at it and you would make a lot of money, and I think you should try it. And that was
Fuck yeah.
so fucking liberating. I can't even explain to you how healing it was for me to hear a man that I was actually dating say something like that. It's funny because him and I had a falling out and he's really not actively in my life anymore. But just in that piece or that role he played at that point in my life was so pivotal and important and impactful for me. And I actually realized at that point to what extent it was the previous relationships I had with men that had held me back. Which is funny because the boyfriend I had in between this guy and the other guy who helped me build my fetish business was totally okay with escorts. But at that point, I was so stuck in this idea of what I'm doing is okay because there's no sex that I didn't even consider the option. But then when I was
Yeah.
dating this guy who was like, how am I going to build my brand? I want to be a male sex worker. I remembered how badly I'd like always wanted to try it. So just having him react in such a positive way was like, oh my God, this is possible. Like I can actually, I realized at that moment that one of my fears was that I wouldn't be eligible to be in a relationship with a quality man if I was a sex worker, like an escort.
Which is like not true at all.
It's not true at all. And I realized that actually. But it can be more of a challenge. There are a lot of quality men who have these misconceptions or blockages around sex work.
I mean, men and women both. It's yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, but I care less about women's opinions than I do about a potential mate.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah, so the fact that he kind of gave me permission, and I know I didn't need permission, but it was like if I was given permission, which is funny because we didn't actually date for that long, and in reality, his opinion doesn't matter at all in my life at this point. But it was like a metaphorical permission. It was like life was saying to me through this man, like, you're ready, you would be good at this, you should try it, and, just go for it.
It is funny to where like you'll think sometime you'll think like, oh man, I think I could do something, but you don't do it. And then somebody will kind of not necessarily put the idea in your head, but you kind of mention it again, and they're like, "Oh, that's a good idea," and you're like, "Wait a second, that is a great idea. What the fuck? Why am I not doing this thing?" And just like they like it, you have that idea the whole time, but maybe just somebody else kind of like agreeing with you or saying like, "Hey, I think that's a good idea," just gives you that jolt to like, "Hey, let's do this thing."
But also having it be a boyfriend saying, like, I would totally date you, even
Yeah,
even if you were an escort.
yeah.
That was a big piece, actually. And I had never thought about it before like that. I realized how big of a piece it was when it happened. I was like, oh, fuck, actually, this is really impactful for me, knowing that I can still be loved.
Yeah.
It's interesting also because, one of the people that I work with in my personal life works with a lot of sex workers. And when I got into my relationship that I'm into now, and I published it, online, everything, this person asked me like, what was my job now, and if I was still escorting or if I stopped. And what I realized, it's kind of a normal thing to ask, I guess, because a lot of sex workers, when they get into relationships, they change jobs. So there's a lot of guys out there that are not okay with dating a sex worker.
Yep. Those The losers. Hey.
No, I don't agree with that. I mean, everybody has their own boundaries. I can imagine,
Yeah, yeah,
especially if you're very monogamous. Like if you're monogamous, you might not be okay, right, with this, because
yeah.
it's kind of a breach of monogamy. But I guess it depends on how you look at it. For some people, I know a guy who, for him, you can be monogamous and date a sex worker because it doesn't count because it's her job, and that's one way to look at it. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I'm in a relationship right now. My girlfriend's a sex worker, and I don't. I mean, it's not even a thing. Like, it's like, it's a job. Like, it has no effect on like our relationship at all. It's not even a thing.
And that's interesting because from my perspective is the complete opposite. I've been an ethical non-monogamist for almost my entire life, and I've had open relationships, and I've been into polyamory for quite a while now. Mentioned before that I was a sex educator. One of the subjects I teach on is ethical non-monogamy. So I'm really interested in ethical non-monogamy as a whole. I think it's a great way of relating with people, and that there are many different degrees on how that can be manifested in a relationship. But even in my ethically non monogamous relationships, sex work didn't count because it was okay with them if I chose to be with someone else. But if I'm not choosing it, I'm being paid for it, and it's not somebody that I'm attracted to, turned on by, or actually want to fuck, then that's not comfortable.
Yeah.
So having a boyfriend who allows me to sleep with other guys that I actually have feelings for and who respect me is one thing. But where he might have a boundary would be, well, I don't want you to fuck for money because it's a different thing. It's not as honorable, or it's not coming from a place of true desire and love and respect. So that doesn't make me comfortable.
That's interesting. I never really thought about the fact that like somebody would be okay with you like sleeping with somebody else like for your pleasure, but drawing a line of you sleeping with somebody else for money.
Exactly, which was my experience, which is interesting. And I've also met relationships that were like yours. So that which made me realize there's a lot of different ways of looking at it.
That's interesting. I never thought about it like that. That's funny. Oh,
hmm
interesting.
And it's funny because when I was with this guy who gave me permission, okay, so backtracking. I was with this guy, gave me permission, not that I needed permission, but it really allowed me to step out of this blockage of fear based, reticence. Is that a way you can say it? Like reticence? Like I was hesitating based out of fear. And I said, okay, I'm ready. I want to try it. He actually sat down and helped me build my own website with WordPress, which was really nice. And showed me how to kind of fix it up the way that I want. And so we did that for like an entire weekend. And then I put up my first ad, and I started getting to know what were the other girls doing to stay safe, what were their screening processes, and figuring out how I was going to do things my own way. And I started seeing clients. And the first few clients that I had, I immediately realized that I enjoyed it more than the fetish work. So the first thing that struck me was how it was no longer a question of me being in service to their fantasy, whereas the misconception is that that's all it is, which is very, very interesting. So the misconception about being a Dom is that they're at your service, but in reality, you're at their service. And then the
Yeah.
misconception about being an escort is that you're at their service, when in reality, you're at each other's service.
Okay.
Think
Yeah.
about that
That
one
makes
for a
sense.
second. So, on an energetic basis, what's really going on is when you're a Dom, you are entirely structuring a session from beginning to end, creating a physical, emotional, and mental journey for the submissive or the slave. And you are
Yeah.
outside of the journey as a conductor, creating it for them. Now, you may or may not get physical pleasure, get actually turned on, or enjoy the work. That is irrelevant. You are not receiving energy, you are giving energy. You're receiving some, and oh, well, I don't want to say it that way. You're receiving some energy, but you're mostly giving energy. So it's a lot more draining. Whereas
Yeah.
when you are sharing intimacy, affection, and sexuality in a GFE session, the energy is going in both directions. They're giving you pleasure, you're giving them pleasure. They're giving you affection, you're giving them affection. When you're kissing someone, you're both receiving kissing. When you're touching someone, you're both receiving touch. So there is an exchange there where you can come out of a session feeling nourished rather than drained.
Do you feel versus like escorting versus doming, which emotional labor do you think is higher?
Definitely doming. Definitely. By a long shot. I mean, I guess it depends on the person, but I've spoken to other DOMs about this, and there is a general theme that keeps coming up. So not all DOMs feel the same way. I want to say if you are a naturally dominant, sexually dominant girl, which is very rare, but someone who actually fantasized about being sexually dominant with men long before ever becoming a DOM for money, then most likely it will be a different experience for you. But the general consensus is that women that are doing it as a profession because they're good at it and it pays well are more drained by it than they would be, I want to say, from a sexual encounter or a GFE encounter. Although a lot of the DOMs that I know that are doing it for money and that are also really good at it, but that were not necessarily sexually dominant as teenagers, for example, never became escorts. So it would be hard to know how to compare the two, but they do say that they find it draining, and oftentimes when they retire from it and do other work, that's one of the things that comes up when they talk about it.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
How long do you see yourself in sex work, escorting, or I guess every aspect of sex work? How long do you see yourself in sex work?
I want to say my whole life in different ways and different intensity levels because I'm so in the beginning of the podcast, you mentioned that I'm an entrepreneur. So what does that mean? So I do so many different things in the sex industry. So I'm an educator. I'm a performer. I'm a model. I've organized events. I've participated in events. I've taken workshops. I've given workshops. I've mentored other workers. So, and I'm an active member of the adult community. So I'm actively a member of the swinger community in Montreal, although I do not consider myself a swinger. I'm an ethical non-monogamous, so I'm polyamorous, but I do not consider myself a swinger. But I teach, about those subjects and what are the differences between those different titles and how does that work. And so I don't see myself ever living a life where I don't do any kind of work in the sex industry.
Okay.
What will that look like in 10 years? I have no idea.
Yeah, I was gonna be like, where are you in 5 years? Where do you?
I'm definitely probably going to still be a sex worker as an escort for at least a few more years and probably another 10 years. I mean, right now I'm kind of on pause. I'm kind of on pause because of COVID. So I still do some work, but I've been doing so much less because I've been trying to be careful with the virus. And that has slowed me down on my projects. But my original plan, and it's still my plan, it's just kind of semi on pause right now, was to be an escort full time, tour the world, make as much money as I can doing this job, have amazing clients, have cool experiences, do all this other stuff that I do, part time on the side, and save as much money as I can, put all my money away, and make some good investments so that, in my 40s at some point, I can retire with a good solid financial life established for myself. And I've already started to do this. I've made some some good investments. So
Did you buy any Bitcoin?
I have some Bitcoin. I'm not so into it at this point. I had some clients who made a lot of money with Bitcoin. For me, it's like I prefer at this point the stock market, and the reason for that is
Yeah,
that the stock market has a long standing proven track record, and if you understand how it works and you're making good choices and wise selection of investments, I don't know. I feel like it's more solid in the long term. Whereas with Bitcoin, like we have no idea what's going to happen to Bitcoin in the coming years. We don't know if it's going to be taken more seriously or less seriously. If governments are going to, outlaw it or like it can go in so many directions. It feels a little bit volatile to me.
yeah,
I'm sure
because
I mean, there's a lot of
it's
good,
it's still
I don't
new.
want to shit on Bitcoin. There's a lot of good positive aspects of it. I think it's really brilliant and cool. I'm not as ready to dabble with it, but I may be at some point. Who knows?
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I definitely understand that. Like, it's it's you don't know what's gonna happen, and it's like not literally not backed up by anything. It's just people are throwing money into it, trying to grow. But
Exactly. Yeah.
it's nothing. It's not.
But it's an interesting thing, like to take some payments in some places. It might be a good way, or it's definitely a useful tool which I have used and will continue to use. But in terms of investment, I'm much more interested in the stock market and real estate, and also in businesses. I've had other business projects in the past, and I'd be interested in having other business projects in the future. I love business. I love having my own business, and I love being an entrepreneur, and I'd love to have other interesting businesses in the future. My biggest dream, goal, and desire is to be mobile and international. And I want to spend all of my time in a warm location, but not necessarily always the same warm location. So
Okay.
yeah, so trying to build a life where I can be a little bit of a nomad. So I have a lot of ideas of how that will develop, but I will in 10 years either be or even in 5 years, or even, as the future is coming, I'm either going to be a snowbird, or just a nomad, a traveler.
That'd be awesome. Like I feel like so many people say like, "Hey, I want to like travel," but nobody gets to do it. But if you get the get the opportunity and be able to like live sustainably to where you're able to travel, like that's awesome.
Well, I already do. I tour, and I've been touring a little bit, and I've been dabbling in it and learning how, and learning how to be successful, what are the places to make money, how to get clients in those locations. And I've just been starting to explore that, but I'm definitely going to be exploring it more and more in the future. And then, so that's a great foot in the door, and, trying to save as much money as I can so that I can have good investments for the future. And then after that, do I see myself only doing sex work full time for the rest of my life? I don't think so. I think at some point I will either have some real estate investments or another business that is bringing in money. And I'm always open to figuring out what that will be. I've had other projects that I've kind of dabbled in the past, sort of looking for the right project, and some things didn't work out. But I'm glad I experienced them, and I might be open to doing them again in the future, or finding another project. So it really depends on how my life unfolds. But I love business. And if I meet, for example, a partner or a friend or somebody that would like to have business with me, or start a project of some kind, and we want to work on it together, and it will allow us to be in a warm place, then I will not hesitate to do it.
Hell yeah.
But my goal
Do you-
ultimately is to build my finances to a point where by my mid to late 40s, I can retire and just live my life to the fullest in a happy way. But I probably will always have some interesting projects independently of my age. Just, I like the idea of having projects because they motivate me, rather than having projects to put food on the table.
yeah, definitely. The two different things.
Exactly. Although when they can be married, it's great, which I try to go
Yeah.
for as much as possible.
Like if you can make money and live doing something you're passionate about and like that's fulfilling, like that is, I feel like that's the ultimate goal.
I do already. And like one of the things I've considered doing is coaching. One of the things I've noticed is that in my sex work, I tend to do a lot of coaching, intimacy coaching, life coaching, and a form of therapy that I do with my clients, which is showing up for them, giving them love, giving them company, which is interesting because I always used to think it was going to be just sex. But what I've realized in the in-person work of escorting, depending on how you're doing it. Now, if you're doing 15, 30-minute sessions, it's just sex. The guy comes in, gives you money, fucks, and leaves. Now, that's one way of doing it. And I have nothing against that. People who enjoy that or who make a lot of money, that's fine. I don't judge. But that's not what I do. I do longer sessions, and I really enjoy connecting on a social and on a heart level with my lovers. I consider them to be a lover. I'm sharing space, intimate space, opening my mind, my body, my heart to them, and welcoming them in whatever capacity that they show up. So who they are, their heart, their soul. And I try to look at them as somebody who is no different than a brother or a father or a cousin or a good friend. It's a real person who has the need for something, and that need is sacred. And how can I show up in a sacred way to fulfill their need? So I really show up fully embodied, and so I can touch them very profoundly, and offer them something that I consider to be quite sacred work. There's a depth to it that is absolutely incredible that I never realized there was until I started doing it.
I don't think a lot of people do. I feel like a lot of people on the surface level, they're like, "Oh, it's a sex thing. That's the only thing." And it's like way more than that.
It's a connection thing, it's an affection thing, and it's a loving thing. And if you can show up from a place of love, it is very sacred, powerful, and necessary work.
Definitely.
So I do show up from a place of love, and it's not uncommon for me to be in a session with a person that I've just met, and we're exchanging whatever intimacy, and in my head I'm thinking I love you, or that thought will cross through my head, and then I think to myself, I'm nuts, I don't even know this person, why am I thinking this thought? Like, what the fuck is wrong with me? And then I kind of realize as I analyze it later on that actually what's going on is this is how I'm showing up. I'm actually opening my heart. And so love is manifesting, and it's coming into the point of being even in words in my head. And so obviously I don't say this to the person, because if I were to say this, they'd freak out.
Or they'll be like, "I love you too," and then we got a
I mean,
problem.
I don't actually know how they would react. I've never even tried it because I kind of don't dare, because I'm kind of nervous of what they would think. But the fact of thinking it is enough for me, because what it does is it transpires in how I touch them. So my goal is to infuse my presence with loving warmth and acceptance and nurturing and healing energy and love, and even it can get really kinky or sexual or dirty, and that can be super fun too, but always trying to kind of show up from that space, especially when I feel I can sense that someone needs it, which isn't the case for everybody, but some people show up and you feel that that's what they need. And I really, really enjoy offering them that.
And I feel like you can feel that from somebody that just like has that like loving touch or makes you feel good and safe, and yeah, it's a great
More
thing.
than that, it's for me, it's really when someone comes to me and I can tell that they're sad, or I can tell that they're lonely, or they're hurting. I can tell that it's been a long time since they've been given any affection or looked at, really looked at. Either they feel lonely or invisible or disconnected or drained or overworked or, undersexed. A lot of people do not have enough sex, and sex, I think, is as vital for our well-being as food and sleep and water.
Yeah,
So it can be actually very toxic for them to be in that space. So when I feel like someone is showing up and I can feel their pain, or I can feel their suffering, which is coming from any one of those emotions that I mentioned, or even fear or insecurity, or feeling like they're not good enough, or feeling ashamed in front of women because they don't know how to talk to women, or they've been humiliated, or they've been betrayed, or they've been whatever negative experience that they've had. Or, I've had a lot of clients that, either they had a relationship where they're married for 30 years and there hasn't been sex for the last 10 or 15 years, and they have children and a life together, and they don't want to leave her, but they're lonely and they're hurting and they need touch. Whatever the story is, but you can feel it when someone is with you. You can feel these things, especially me. I've developed my sensitivity to feeling the men that I'm working with through the fetish work so much that yeah, I can just tell. And so I feel like I'm able to show up as almost a priestess.
that's awesome.
Yeah. Like my goal
Because
is to welcome their pain and transmute it in my heart through love. So I receive it, but I'm not like an empath that will feel pain when other people are feeling pain. I'll feel their pain in the sense of, like, I'll recognize the pain. I'll feel it, that I know that it's there. I can witness it, but I can take the position of the witness. So I feel it, I see it. It is not mine. I do not own it. And then I can receive it and transform it into love through this, I love you kind of emotion that I feel with, opening my heart and finding them beautiful and finding them divine and seeing them as one of, and I don't want to go all religious on you, but one of God's children. And I do believe in a divine being. So I don't like using the word God because it's often associated with religion. So my God has absolutely nothing to do with religion. It's really just divine source. So from a divine source perspective, you call it God, goddess, whatever you want to call it. We are all children of God. We are all made of God. We are all divine beings. And so I can see this person from that perspective and just love them and receive whatever it is that they're feeling that's negative. And, just by holding them in my arms or kissing them or just talking with them and looking at them in the eyes and like really being present and open and authentic and, sharing whatever's beautiful about me, being myself, because I'm very much myself in my sessions, for better or for worse. you know, and just kind of offering them love. And I can feel it when it works. I can tell how someone is different from when they've arrived, when they leave, how they feel relieved, they feel better, they have less pressure on their shoulders, they feel more connected, happier, they have all the oxytocin running through their bodies from all the hugging and the affection. I love giving affection, you know, and not every session will have a full intercourse. Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. Sometimes it's just, whatever it is that they need in the moment, which is so interesting that I didn't expect that that would be the case when I first started doing the work.
How does it feel at the end of a session, like to where you can tell somebody when they came in, they were nervous or they had this heavy weight on their mind, and seeing them leave, being like that weight's been lifted, feeling like, oh, like happy? How does that feel on your part?
I mean, it feels amazing because the thing is that when I'm doing that for you, I'm also receiving it myself. So not only is the part of me that cares about the whole world and wants to heal the world and wants to help everybody and wants to make the world a better place, feeling elated and proud and feeling like a sacred contributor to the positive flow or the good flow or the divine flow of good things in life. I don't know how else to say it, but there's that aspect. But not only that, but also as somebody who also dabbles in tantra and all that, I feel how energy flows, and when you uh, take this negative energy and transmute it into positive energy, or when you take someone who's lonely and you make them feel loved, you make them feel presence. When you take someone who's whatever it is that the negative emotion is, and you're able to transmute that into pleasure, enjoyment, companionship, friendship, love, and happiness, that is contagious. Positive emotions are so contagious. So
Definitely.
I end up feeling that exact same way. They leave, and most of the time, I've got a huge smile on my face. I'm like, I just had a fucking good time. I made a bunch of money. I had this and this pleasure. I had this and this, cool experience. And this person is feeling wonderful because of me.
Yeah,
It's
that's
great.
great.
I love my job. I really do. I really do. It's the most beautiful, sacred work. I think it's the most important job in the world, and people don't realize it.
I agree. I feel like you're helping people, making people feel good. Fucking, it's a great thing.
Absolutely.
It's so awesome you have the diverse background to where you can like offer somebody so many different things when they come to you.
I know, and it's one of the things that makes it fun because I can work with all kinds of different people too.
Yeah.
I love it. I honestly do.
Are you a fan of stand up comedy at all? Weird segue.
I
Are you a
I
fan of
am.
stand up?
I love to laugh, and especially when I'm not feeling well for whatever reason, if I don't have any energy or if I'm feeling sick or whatever, I think comedy is such a healing, profoundly healing thing. And so I watched a lot of comedy, even just comedy like series on TV or on Netflix rather, and stand-up comedy is amazing, but it depends on the comedian, really. There's a lot that I can't there's a lot of stand-up comedy that I will watch and I don't laugh and I don't even find it a little bit funny and I don't understand why they're up there. But when there's a good stand-up comedian and I'm laughing the whole time, like that's amazing.
That's one of the things about comedy that I love is it's so subjective to where like I can watch something and I'm like, "Oh my god, that's so funny." You watch that exact same thing and you're like, "That was terrible." you know?
Well, we agree
It
on
all
Russell Peters.
Yeah, Russell Peters so funny. He's great.
Yeah, yeah.
Where can the people find you on the old social media? What you have Twitter?
Everything is on my link tree.
Everything's on your link
Yes,
tree.
I have a link to my Instagram, my Twitter. And my website, my YouTube channel, which only has 2 videos right now, but soon is going to have your podcast and probably more in the future. I have links to my website and everything that I have. Basically, I think I have a few other links on there.
Okay, sweet. Heck yeah. What I'll do is I'll plug your Twitter, Instagram, everything in the intro and outro so that people can subscribe and then also hit that link tree. And yeah.
It's very easy. linktr.ee/Anna Perrena. ANNAPERRENA.
And then, oh yeah, I'll have a link for everything in the show notes as well, so everybody can check that out too. So, heck yeah. Anna, I appreciate you coming on the podcast.
I appreciate you having me. It's very nice. I love the opportunity to do something like this.
Hell yeah, this has been a lot of fun. Fuck yeah.
Hopefully we can meet again in the future and collaborate again. I would be very happy to do more with you.
Definitely, definitely. Fuck yeah. Listeners, we will be back later. That was my interview with Anna Perrena. Yo, shout out Anna. I appreciate you coming on the podcast. That was a lot of fun. Listeners, she just plugged it. I will plug it again. You can find her link tree. linktr.ee/Anna Perrena. You can find her on Twitter at Anna_Perrena, on Instagram at Anna.Perrena. I will have links to her social media, her link tree in the show notes. Hit those show notes. Show her some love. As always, you can find us on Twitter, on Instagram at Full Service Pod. I am at Tank Funkadelic. This has been episode 77. I appreciate you being here. We will be back on Tuesday. Ooh boy. My guest is Atlanta-based companion Cherith Carter. That we sat down maybe a couple weeks ago. So it'll be a lot of fun. Tune in next week. We will be back. I have a link again in the old show notes, baby, to that Answer Detroit GoFundMe. Yo, donate if you can. If you can't, hey, I totally understand. Hey, I feel like that's it for the outro today. Yo, I appreciate you being here. Follow us on social media. Subscribe to the podcast. Hit the old Patreon, patreon.com/Full Service Pod. We will be here every Tuesday till the end of time. I will see you later. Peace. Full Service.